Now, gender-based violence continues to be one of the most notable human rights violations within all societies, with the COVID-19 pandemic unfortunately increasing the risk of the most vulnerable persons, that's women and children. And as Raquel Muigai reports in tonight's feature, it appears that it is not yet safe for those affected as the odds continue to be stacked against them.
Yani ndoa ilikuwa na matatizo, kupigana kila wakati. Yani ni kama akona kikwazo na mimi. Eti wewe tu, ngoja. Nitakuja kukuchomea kwa hii nyumba siku moja. Nitakuja na petroli nikuchomea kwa hii nyumba siku moja.
For the last 12 years, 30-year-old Phyllis Auri has lived to be the punching bag of her husband since they met in 2008.
Toka nikaanza tu kuzaa huyo mtoto wa kwanza, vita vikaanza tayari. Mimi niliolewa kwake na meno yote mdomoni, lakini kwa saa hii meno yameharibika, ingine imeng'oka, ni kwa ajili ya kichapo. Ananiambia kwamba wewe lazima tu nitakufanya tu chochote kwa sababu hata nilikuchapa nikakutoa meno, lakini wazazi wako hawakunifanya lolote. So wewe unaweza tu kufanya chochote kwa sababu hata hushughulikiwi.
The words deeply cut within her being, forcing her to frequently change homes, not only to protect her life but also that of her 3 young boys. Her actions, however, did not yield the expected relief.
Alienda kule shuleni akangoja watoto shuleni ili waje wote ajue penye ninakaa. Alikuja hapo akajua. Tena the same hivyo tu alikuwa anakuja hivyo tu. Yaani hakuna ile siku alikuja kwa amani wala nini, ama sema naenda kuona watoto wangu ni wapelekee kitu kama labda sukari nini, hakuna. Yaje hivyo mikono mitupu, tena yaje na vita.
More often than not, her boys will become silent witnesses in a battle that saw her bitten for hours on end. Reports to the police station, she says, provided only a temporary reprieve.
Hiyo siku alilala ndani. Askari walimwambia kwamba sisi hatukulazimishi kukaa na bibi yako. Tunataka tu uangalie watoto pekee. Wewe ni chaguo lako kama utaamua kurudi kwa bibi yako ama kama utaamua kukaa kule, ni chaguo lako wewe mwenyewe.
He was later released after pleading for his life before her. That was early this year. However, on the 17th of July, she received this text from her husband. Phyllis says she did not respond to the text because she suspected her husband was using it as a bait to figure out where she was staying and with who. The threats to her life were to her an ordinary thing. On 27th July, 10 days after he sent her that text, he was to fulfill his threats. He located Phyllis in one of the neighbors' house.
Na hivyo tu tayari akafungua petroli akaanza kunimwagia pale kwa nyumba ya jirani. Sasa jirani akawa anapiga nduru huko akitusukuma nje ili sababu akiwasha kiberiti nyumba itachomeka. Sasa ile kungangana naye, na uzuri alikuwa hajatoa kiberiti kwa mfuko. Tena kiberiti mtoto alisema alichukua ndani ya nyumba yangu. Lakini petroli ilinimwagikia mpaka ikaisha yote. Ndio nilipata kuniachilia, nikapata nafasi ya kukimbia nje ya gate. Kule nje sasa alitoka huko akawa ananikimbiza. Aniwashie kiberiti. Huku nikipiga nduru nikisema jameni, nachomwa, nimemwagiwa petroli, nachomwa.
The ordeal saw her run to the only person she knew could protect her, Mama Teresia Alexander, who offered to keep all of Phyllis' belongings under her roof.
Yeye anakimbia mahali kuna msaada, lakini kule pia anapata hakuna msaada. Sababu gani? Hakifikisha kesi kule, inaenda, yule anakuja anamtoa, hiyo mambo inaisha. Yule msaada anabaki kwa shida.
The story of Phyllis is now only one in a growing list of gender-based violence cases that have spiked during the COVID-19 pandemic. The National GBV Helpline 1195 registered an increase of 33.7% of GBV cases in March at the onset of the dusk to dawn curfew in Kenya. Since then, the call center has recorded a steady increase. 753 cases were reported in May and 785 cases in the month of June. Nairobi, Kakamega, Lamu, Kisumu, Nakuru, Kisii, Homa Bay and Kiambu counties registering a majority of the cases. 68% of the victims were females, whereas 32% were males.
For us in the Ministry on Gender Issues, the new normal is sad. And it's good that people start factoring GBV as loss to economy.
A 2019 report conducted by the audit firm KPMG in partnership with telecommunication giant Vodafone suggested that Kenya loses 5 billion shillings every year from violence on working women. The report says at least 500,000 women are forced to take additional days off work due to GBV-related cases. Raquel Muigai, the Chief Administrative Secretary at the Ministry of Public Service and Gender, indicates that despite the availability of such data, there is still laxity on key players.
It can be disappointed because it becomes a sexist kind of conversation. And so we've been very frustrated. And I can tell you women leaders who sit in the Senate or the National Assembly are always very devastated when they start these conversations because then it degenerates. And most of the time, we just get exactly what is in the budget. We hardly get an increase. So that is first the nut to crack.
Muigai blames what she says is inadequate funding, which hampers the establishment of safe houses and GBV recovery centres.
So currently, we don't have a safe house in Kilifi that we can actually mention that we have a safe house. When we have such cases that are very needy, they are taken to Nairobi for a safe house and then they are brought back through the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution.
At the moment, Kenya has only one government-run such shelter in Makueni County. There are 36 other shelters run by civil society organizations across 13 counties, among them Nairobi, Kisumu, Mombasa and Kwale. But during the COVID-19 pandemic, a majority of them have had to shut their doors.
So most women would go to police stations or chief's offices. And then after they've reported, then what? Because if they go back to the same house or community where they're being violated, they're not safe.
That is what played out in the life of 15-year-old Terry, not her real name. She was raped by someone well known to her at her hometown in Kazandani, Mombasa, in March this year.
Alinichukua paka kwa nyumba yake. Kanambia anataka kunini. Tukaenda paka kwa bedroom yake, akandalisha kitandani. Akanifanya tabia mbaya.
Her brother and a neighbor found the man in the act and had him arrested. However, the girl was issued with a warning from the police officers.
Kujulia zaidi kile kinaendelea, ndio akanambia tulipotoka hospitali kufika police station, ameambiwa mtoto asikae hapa, nimtafutie mahali popote akae, na mimi sina mahali pa kumpeleka na sina mtu mwingine. Mimi mtu nakujua ni wewe, kwa hivyo sijui utanisaidia na mtoto.
Malaika, also not her real name, would opt to take in the girl, as a few days later the perpetrator was out on a cash bail and the deal was already underway to get him off the hook.
Ofisa alimpigia simu, akamwambia ujue nyinyi majirani, kwa nafikiri walikuwa wakitaka waongee amuozeshe huyu msichana, hata kama ni mahari alipi, lakini mambo yaishi.
Campaigners say the out-of-court settlements in many parts of the country remain a big challenge in dealing with gender-based violence, especially when victims are children. In June this year, elders in Wajir wanted to settle a case of an assistant chief who had defiled a 16-year-old girl through what is locally known as the Masla system.
So if they normalize it within the community, it's possible that they transfer that attitude back into the system. What needs to change is for us to strengthen accountability processes for those who are duty bearers.
But while many want their perpetrators to face the full force of the law, the belief in the system that caters for victims is far from being achieved.
Askari mwenye amepewa hiyo kesi alikuwa hayuko, alikuwa ameenda kotini. Sasa wakaniambia nisubiri. Lakini upande wa wazazi wangu wananihitaji nyumbani. Hata tayari nisha buku gari.
Phyllis said she was more inclined to heading back to Mumias, where her parents are. But even that is a risk in itself, as she is afraid of putting her parents too in danger. She has resigned to a life of running away and always watching her back, an unfortunate scenario that many like her, both men and women, have found themselves in. With there seemingly being no end to the number of gender-based violence cases reported in the country, it is these houses and more that will continue to muzzle the screams of those in pain. But as it stands, victims will have to write their stories or have their graveyards take up that responsibility. Raquel Muigai, Citizen TV, in Ziwa la Ng'ombe, Mombasa County.